Evelyn had spent years working as a cleaning lady at Hawthorne and Beck, a powerful corporation in Dallas, Texas. To the executives, she was invisible, just another worker in the background, someone to clean up after them without a second thought. She endured years of disrespect, overhearing condescending remarks and witnessing unethical practices. But what no one knew was that Evelyn was not just a cleaning lady. She was the majority shareholder of the company, having inherited shares from her late husband. Instead of reacting impulsively to the injustice she observed, Evelyn quietly gathered evidence, listened, and planned her next move. When the moment was right, she walked into the shareholders' meeting, shocking everyone by revealing her true position. With undeniable proof of corruption, she orchestrated the removal of the ruthless CEO, Alan Greaves. But Evelyn's goal was more than just revenge. She wanted change. After taking control, she implemented policies to protect employees, ensure fair wages, and transform the toxic workplace culture. In the end, she proved that power isn't always about status or wealth. It's about resilience, patience, and the courage to act when the time is right. The once invisible woman became the force that reshaped the entire company. Hawthorne and Beck was a company built on the illusion of success, with its sleek glass headquarters in Dallas symbolizing power and prosperity. However, behind the polished image lay a toxic corporate culture, where employees were treated as disposable, and only the most vocal and ruthless individuals thrived. Promotions were handed out not based on merit, but on influence and connections. The higher one climbed the corporate ladder, the less they cared about those beneath them. At the heart of this corrupt system was CEO Alan Greaves, a man who ruled through fear and arrogance. He saw employees as tools to be used and discarded, openly mocking older staff members and making cruel remarks about those he deemed unworthy. Evelyn, a long-time cleaning lady, had witnessed it all. She had watched executives cut bonuses for hard-working employees while rewarding themselves with extravagant celebrations. She had overheard discussions about unethical layoffs where entire teams were dismissed without a second thought. When a whistleblower tried to speak out, she saw how they were quietly removed from the company, their concerns buried under layers of corporate deception. Worst of all, Evelyn experienced firsthand the dismissive way employees like her were treated, spoken to with condescension, ignored, or regarded as mere background figures in the grander scheme of corporate politics. Despite enduring years of silent mistreatment, Evelyn never let anger cloud her judgment. She remained patient, quietly observing and absorbing every detail of the company's inner workings. While others ignored her, she took note of every unethical practice, every injustice, and every careless decision made by those in power. What no one realized was that she held more power than any of them could imagine. She was not just an unnoticed cleaning lady. She was the majority shareholder of Hawthorne and Beck. The same people who had dismissed her as invisible were about to realize just how wrong they had been. Evelyn wasn't just watching, she was preparing for the moment when she would finally step forward and change everything. For years, Evelyn had moved through the hallways of Hawthorne and Beck unnoticed, blending into the background as just another cleaning lady. Executives passed her by without a second glance, and employees barely acknowledged her presence. What none of them realized was that she carried a secret more powerful than any of their titles. She was the majority shareholder of the company. When her husband, Martin, passed away, he left her a controlling stake in the corporation he had quietly invested in during its early days. At first, Evelyn felt overwhelmed by this unexpected power. She had never been involved in corporate decision-making, nor did she see herself as a businesswoman. She was just Evelyn, a hard-working woman who had spent her life raising children, enduring struggles, and finding solace in routine. But as she continued working at Hawthorne and Beck, she began to see the true nature of the company. She witnessed firsthand the corruption, the unethical decisions, and the disregard for employees. Unlike the executives, She saw the people behind the numbers, the janitors struggling to make ends meet, the secretaries dismissed as irrelevant, and the lower-level staff who worked tirelessly while upper management reaped the rewards. Instead of revealing her identity immediately, Evelyn chose to remain silent, using her invisibility to her advantage. She observed without suspicion, listened to conversations no one thought she could hear, and gathered the knowledge she needed. She read the documents left carelessly on desks, took mental notes of financial manipulations, and watched as executives prioritized greed over ethics. With time, she realized that her silence was not a weakness but a weapon. The company had long underestimated her, but she now understood the power of patience and strategy. She wasn't just watching, she was planning. When the time was right, she would step out of the shadows, and the very people who had dismissed her as unimportant would finally see who truly held the power. Evelyn was no longer just a cleaning lady, she was the force that would change everything. Evelyn had spent years observing the corruption at Hawthorne and Beck, but she knew that exposing it required careful planning. She had seen too many people stand up against the company's unethical practices only to be silenced and cast aside. If she was going to make a difference, she had to be strategic. She wasn't just going to reveal the truth, she was going to dismantle the toxic system from within. Her first step was gathering evidence. Unlike others, Evelyn had an advantage. She was invisible to the people in power. Executives spoke freely in front of her, believing she was just another cleaning lady who wouldn't understand or care about their conversations. They left confidential reports on their desks, walked past her while discussing fraudulent deals, and openly laughed about layoffs that would devastate the lives of their employees. Evelyn took mental notes, remembering names, figures, and critical details. She wasn't stealing information. She was simply watching, listening, and piecing together the puzzle of corruption. The second step was finding the right allies. Evelyn knew that she couldn't take on the entire corporation alone, so she reached out to trusted people outside the company. Former employees who had been mistreated, financial analysts who could interpret the company's suspicious transactions, and lawyers who specialized in corporate ethics. Each of them helped her build an airtight case. With their guidance, she compiled documents, testimonies, and reports that would be impossible to ignore. The final step was the most difficult, facing the leadership team head-on. Evelyn knew that speaking up in front of powerful executives would not be easy. But she also knew that she had something stronger than fear, the truth. She practiced her speech in front of a mirror, ensuring her voice was steady and her words were clear. This wasn't just about confronting a corrupt CEO. It was about standing up for every worker who had been dismissed, ignored, or mistreated. As the shareholders' meeting approached, Evelyn felt the weight of what she was about to do. But she was ready. She had been invisible for too long. Now it was time for the world to see her. The day of the shareholders' meeting arrived, and the atmosphere at Hawthorne and Beck was filled with confidence. Executives walked through the hallways with smug expressions, discussing the company's continued financial success. In the boardroom, the most powerful figures of the corporation gathered, expecting nothing more than another routine meeting. No one paid attention to Evelyn as she entered, pushing her cleaning cart as she always did. To them, she was just another worker in the background, someone they had dismissed for years. But today, she wasn't there to clean, she was there to take control. With a steady voice, Evelyn interrupted the meeting, cutting through the room's arrogance like a blade. Alan Greaves, the CEO, barely looked at her, waving her off as if she were an inconvenience. But Evelyn didn't move. Instead, she pulled out a folder labeled Shareholders Report and placed it firmly on the table. Confusion turned into shock as she calmly revealed her identity. She wasn't just a cleaning lady, she was the majority shareholder of Hawthorne and Beck. The room fell silent as she laid out the evidence: financial manipulations, unethical layoffs, harassment complaints that had been ignored, and fraudulent expense reports. Board members flipped through the documents, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. Alan Greaves, who had built his power on intimidation, found himself powerless as the truth unraveled before him. He tried to protest, but Evelyn had prepared for this moment. Her voice remained calm and firm. With the weight of her majority vote, she called for his immediate removal. The executives, seeing the undeniable evidence, had no choice but to agree. The vote was cast, and Alan Greaves was ousted from his position. Security escorted him out as he raged, his power slipping through his fingers. Evelyn stood tall, no longer invisible. The people who had ignored her for years now looked at her with awe and disbelief. But she wasn't seeking recognition. She was there to bring change. The era of corruption was over. Hawthorne and Beck was about to become something new, and it all started with the woman they had never seen coming. With Alan Greaves removed from power, Evelyn wasted no time in transforming Hawthorne and Beck. She had spent years watching the company thrive at the expense of its employees, and now, with authority in her hands, she was determined to create meaningful change. She did not act out of revenge, but out of a deep commitment to justice and fairness. Her first action was ensuring that the employees who had long been overlooked were finally recognized. The cleaning staff, secretaries, and lower-level workers, the people who had kept the company running behind the scenes, received well-deserved raises. The unfair practice of cutting bonuses for hard-working employees while rewarding top executives with extravagant perks was immediately stopped. Evelyn made it clear that no one's contribution was insignificant, and every employee deserved respect and fair compensation. Beyond financial reform, she tackled the toxic culture that had festered under Alan's leadership. The HR department, once complicit in ignoring harassment and discrimination complaints, was restructured with a third-party watchdog to ensure transparency and accountability. Employees who had been silenced before were now encouraged to speak up without fear of retaliation. Evelyn personally held town hall meetings, inviting workers from every level to share their experiences, concerns, and ideas. For the first time, the company's leadership was forced to listen. The board, once a passive enabler of corruption, now faced a new standard of integrity. Evelyn insisted on leadership training focused on ethics, inclusion, and employee well-being. She ensured that the company's success was no longer built on exploitation, but on genuine teamwork and respect. The change was slow, but it was real. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere at Hawthorne and Beck shifted. Employees who once worked in fear now felt valued. The young intern who had once been humiliated by Alan Greaves now walked through the office with confidence. Evelyn didn't just remove a corrupt leader, she redefined the company's future. As she walked through the hallways, she was no longer the invisible cleaning lady. She was a leader, a force of change, and proof that true power lies in patience, resilience, and the courage to stand up for what is right. Evelyn's story teaches us that true power does not come from status, wealth, or titles. It comes from patience, resilience, and the courage to act when the time is right. In life, many people feel invisible, unappreciated, or dismissed, but that does not mean they lack value. Strength is often found in those who quietly observe, endure hardships, and wait for the right moment to create change. For older generations, Evelyn's journey is a reminder that wisdom, experience, and perseverance hold great power. Society often underestimates those who do not seek attention, yet it is the quiet strength of individuals like Evelyn that shapes history. She did not seek revenge, she sought justice. She did not act impulsively, she planned with purpose. Her story proves that no matter your position in life, you have the ability to make an impact. Age and background do not define one's influence. Character does. Whether in family, community, or workplace, those who lead with integrity and patience will always leave a lasting legacy. The lesson is clear. Never underestimate yourself, and never let others define your worth. Real change begins when silent strength turns into decisive action.